Welcome to the 99th episode of Prometheus Project's Voices Sessions. I'm Tom Bohens, and I'm the host today. I'm going to let my esteemed panel introduce themselves.
Okay, wonderful. Antoinette, I'm a trust researcher, but really I'm a recovering economist who has found out that relationships are really fundamental.
Based for almost 20 years at Wisne, where I'm a professor and I teach research and advise companies on how to navigate global work.
Hello, I'm Joseph Wisne. I'm a cultural entrepreneur and designer of museum exhibitions of the largest company in the US that does that work, heavily involved and immersed in leadership issues.
I'm a PhD educated engineer in the computer chip world, turned commercial startup product person. And I would say I'm also something of a psychological development nerd, or have become, albeit layman.
I'm Barbara Kellerman. I've been interested in leadership and followership all my professional life. I expect to get bored with it any day now, but I'm still waiting.
I prompted everybody here the little 4-minute Prometheus origin story where I reflected on, what was it that I was thinking when we created this community of people that care about leadership and hopefully find a way to help make leading more clear and leaders more common. You guys all had a chance to look at this. What is it about that message that seems correct to you or incorrect, or how does that land with you, and what would you say about the Prometheus assumptions?
I'll jump in. I watched the video, of course, as you had asked us to. And my sense was it's brand new. The message is brand new, and the message is simultaneously as old as time. It is certainly as old as the leadership industry, and some of you are familiar with my use of the term, which is relatively new. It's only about 40 or 50 years old. And I'll simply add that people have been interested in leadership, of course, since time immemorial. We know that. But the industrial aspect of it, the money-making aspect of it, the capitalistic aspect of it, that is really only about 40 or 50 years old. And the ideal in the beginning was exactly your ideal, Tom. But I think the reason we're on this call, the reason we're having this conversation is precisely because the ideal has not only not been realized, but has not even come close to being realized.
I can echo this from a business school perspective. When you think about leadership development as a grand aim, then we're only affecting few people, and from a research perspective. Barbara, I think this is also a fairly recent phenomenon if you look at the longer stretch of research and on many other aspects of organizational psychology. And a lot of the aspects of leadership are very much fragmented. So I come at leadership from a global leadership perspective that's been completely separated from broader aspects of leadership. These two literatures don't talk to each other. So we have that fragmentation that's limiting both our understanding of what leadership ought to be and how we teach it, how we develop people.
I'm also coming from a business school. I know some of the problems. I think silos and fragmentations are a huge issue. And I think what we often forget is that leaders are in organizations. So you cannot develop leaders without developing organizations. So that's one thing I find really important. And also going back to something which was by a dean of the Harvard Business School is this problem that we are very much wedded to a scientific management, to a positivistic research, also in leadership. And that for me brings this another type of fragmentation, and that we want to become always more rational, more scientific. I believe that leaders need to have more practical wisdom, and that's a completely different feature.
I feel very much a student and a listener to most of this. I was struck by two things, though, in the Prometheus treatment, Tom. The first was the warm sense of kudos for any field that's deciding to be seriously introspective and call out its own shortcomings and look to remedy that. I spend a lot of time focused these days on creative collaboration. How do large organizations create products or outcomes that no one person has the knowledge for? So the requirement creatively is to collaborate. And there's no substitute for this idea of iterating flaws, being honest about the flaws, and being able to remedy, improve those things. There's no way to make a great film or a great exhibit or a great video game without that inherent skill. So that's a great thing. I was also secondly struck by this feeling that if leadership is this sort of fundamental human thing, and it goes as deep as like looking introspectively at our own motivations and our own lives and our own needs to become great leaders, then doesn't that mean it's an extraordinarily complex topic that would be difficult for any academic study to fully embrace and understand and then make productive gains?
We still claim, though, we can, but that's another problem.
It's just to support the point, it is by definition interdisciplinary and requires collaboration across silos. And even as we're talking, when you guys use the word organization, my training is as a political scientist, and organizations apply a lot of the time, but by no means do they apply all the time. Sometimes they're totally irrelevant to the leadership that I'm working on and thinking about.
So what struck me about Prometheus, I think, is there seems from an employee or someone on a professional journey, it seems like there's a gap in the execution, I would say. So what we end up doing, it's tick box exercises that HR departments have decided are going to be useful for you, or maybe you've even found something online yourself. It's very difficult to improve the true skills because the best way to do that is through experience or experiential programs or real learning at the front line. And a lot of times, especially if you start in an engineering career, you're not necessarily getting those kinds of experiences and the space to reflect on them. And how do you bridge that gap between an HR prescribed leadership training or equivalent and something that is very effective? I think is something that really jumped out at me as an opportunity for Prometheus.
The passion in me is still that there's got to be a way for people to get some kind of simple, humble sense of who leaders are and what leaders do, and that can make sense to the person on the front line, the Gen Zer person on the front line, or into the senior person with a big scope and a lot of depth in leadership. I think you can articulate those things, but they're so general that all the details underneath them are where you get all the fragmentation and the confusion. So can you create enough of an anchor to give someone coherence, but not for themselves, but also for each other?